Okay, I have just scoured my bookshelves and collected my 30 most favorite art history books for kids, and it was really hard. I'm not even sure. I might have to do a part two because I don't think I can narrow it down to just 30, and that sounds crazy, but there are so many amazing kids books, storybooks, different kind of artist books. We're going to go through a bunch of different varieties of books from board books all the way up to really informational ones today. But I'm mostly focusing on storybooks because it's the easiest way to start a new art exploration. Whether you are focusing on the artist or you're introducing a new art history topic or just an art topic, the story of the artist's life, whether it's from their childhood days or from their adult experience, it gives kids something to connect to. And when they feel a connection to an artist, first of all, it just becomes personal and they have something invested in it. It becomes more memorable. And it just makes the whole entire art exploration so much more meaningful and so much more profound so that kids can really tap into the story of the artist, identify something that maybe they relate to, they identify with, or maybe they see that this artist had a totally different experience from them and that there's something to learn. There's a new perspective to uncover and discover here. So it's a great way to start. It's a great way to let the artists teach our kids instead of us teaching. And sometimes that is a really powerful thing as well. When kids hear something because Helen Frankenthaler said it was that way, or Matisse said it was that way, or Van Gogh did something with a technique that was really interesting, and maybe they take it a different way from the artist than they would from us, and then it gives kids something to connect to. So on that note, I am going to start with the book. The first stack of books I have are all about the idea of artists and animals because this is just such a hit with kids. They love it every single time. Whether or not your kids have pets, they will find something to love about one of these artists. So this was our family's very first art history storybook that got asked to be read at bedtime over and over and over and over again. And once my son found out that Andy Warhol loved cats, he could not get enough of it. He, to this day, absolutely loves pop art, and I'm pretty much convinced it's because Andy Warhol loved cats. So when kids can find something in the artist that makes them relatable, kids don't see these artists as like celebrities the way we do. We think, oh my gosh, Andy Warhol and all of the things we've heard about him and we know about him. To kids, he's just another guy. And when they find out that guy liked cats, let me see his art. I'm all in. I want to know what he did with his art, and it's going to be really fun. So this is an amazing one. There is also this Miro's Magic Animals book. And if you've ever seen, there's the same author did one that's called The Boy Who Bit Picasso. I think it might be out of print, but check your library because it's also a really good one. This one is more in the style of Andy Warhol's Cats is like a storybook style where it's telling the story, but it's funny that his nephew actually wrote this book, so I think there's a little bit of truth to it. So this one is more of like an actual kind of telling of the life of Miro, showing some of his art and things like that. There's a lot more text, so this one might take a little bit longer to get through, or you might want to just do part of it. But it's a great one for animals, and especially like these magic animals, the way that Miro drew them. So they don't have to look realistic. They don't have to, be representational. They can be kind of abstract and whimsical and fun. And then Frida Kahlo and her Animalitos. I love this one because this is a great one to kind of introduce Frida Kahlo as a person and to set aside the tragedy of her life till maybe when kids are a little bit older. So this is a great one that just focuses on all of the animals that she had and that she painted. It's a beautiful story. And we have Cézanne's Parrot. This is a really fun one. Again, it's beautifully illustrated. I love reading all these books and looking at all the great illustrations. And it's fun to a lot of them will have works of art that then you can go and find the real work of art and connect it. And then this one is a loose connection, but I'm including it in the pets anyway because Beatrix Potter and Peter Rabbit. We all know and love her from the Peter Rabbit books. But this is a great one because it talks about the way that she donated a lot of her money to the Lakes District, and she was really an environmentalist. So it tells the story of, her love of nature and all of these great illustrations, but also showing the idea that the artists kind of, their legacy goes beyond their art a lot of times. Okay, so the next stack is about art books that were told from the perspective of the artist as a child. So this is especially interesting for kids too, because we're reading to them while they're kids. So this one is great. It's called Dancing Through Fields of Color. It's about Helen Frankenthaler. She was an abstract expressionist painter. If your kids are really kinesthetic, if they like to move around and do things, they will absolutely love this artist and this book. We have The Iridescence of Birds. This could have kind of gone in the animal category probably, but it's a great story about Matisse as a child and kind of all of the things that inspired him to be the artist he was later on in life. So, and it's from the perspective of him as a child. This is called My Hands Sing the Blues, and it's the story of Romare Bearden. And this is an absolutely beautiful book. And if you don't know his art, it's amazing. Collage, paintings, but it gives kids a totally new perspective on not only how to make art, with the collage techniques and things like that, but also the story that he's telling through his art, the things that he wanted to share in his message. So then we have Vincent Can't Sleep. And again, so many of the art books about Vincent, they're just kind of like art history-ish books with information about his life and his art and things like that. But this is a great one because it talks about, his life as a child, maybe things that might have inspired him. And then he does, it does show his life through as he got older, but it starts with him as a child. And then I love, love, love this book. And if your kids, again, if they're kinesthetic, if they like to move around, they will love Ansel, because they'll relate to him and the way that he didn't want to sit still, and that the way that he loved nature, and the way that he went outside and took these beautiful photographs. And did you know he almost became a concert pianist? He had such a fascinating life. So they will love this book. And I wanted to include this one as well because your kids are never too little to start learning about artists. This is a board book. So I don't know if you can see, but this is like one of those board books with the really thick pages. And your babies can start learning about Ansel Adams. This isn't the only one. There are so many great ones. So I had to put that on the list. Then we have two that are especially about color. So if your kids are fascinated with mixing their own colors, using vibrant colors, or using their own kind of different color palette in their work, they will be so inspired by Mary Blair. Mary Blair's unique flair. If you don't know her, if you don't know her, you probably do know her because she was the visionary and the concept artist behind Cinderella, Peter Pan, and Alice in Wonderland. She worked as a concept artist at Disney. She created It's a Small World. She did so many amazing things, and she's most known for her innovative use of color. So this is a great one. And then Alma's art, Alma Thomas, is so fun to explore with kids, especially perfectionist kids, because her style of art will not allow perfectionism. So when your kids are painting or using pastels, however you decide to create art, if you're kind of exploring her style, they will love just kind of like focusing on the colors, and it's abstract, so there's nothing to make perfect, there's nothing to get right. It's just fun. It's just a fun art adventure. Okay, next we have books about artists who kind of just were themselves, were proudly who they were, and did not kind of succumb to what society wanted them to be. So I love this story of Georgia in Hawaii. This is the story of when she was hired to go, I won't spoil the whole story for you, but it's a really fun story about how she was hired to go and paint pineapple for an ad campaign, and she went to Hawaii, and they would not let her go up close in the fields and look at the pineapple plant. So she decided she wasn't going to paint a pineapple. And so she gave them some different paintings. But it's a great story, and it's about being true to yourself and standing up for what you believe in. And then Just Being Dolly is also great, because if your kids are quirky or unusual and, you know, they don't fit into, you know, the usual way that everybody expects people to be, this book, they will identify so much with Salvador Dali and the way that he was just uniquely himself, and he had no interest in being like everybody else. So that's why his art is surrealist, and that's why he showed us a different perspective, this amazing dream world. So those are amazing for that really like being true to yourself kind of theme. So the next set are about just kind of taking the idea of an art history book and doing a few different things. So I wanted to share one. This is a whole entire series. So the Met and DK did this whole series of books. There are so many different artists. I absolutely love Faith Ringgold's art. If you have not seen her art, she created these narrative quilts that combined textile art with painting and writing. So it's really amazing art. And this series is great because it does have a lot of information. So this isn't like the kind of book that you would read at bedtime, like, you know, over and over again, but you could read a few pages, you could dive into parts of it, you could make it, you know, into a multi-day read, because there's a lot of good information in here. So these books are amazing. And then this is also a series, the Lawrence Anholt series. These are amazing because it tells the story from the other perspective of somebody in the artist's life. And usually it's a child. So for Edgar Degas, it's for the ballerina who posed for Little Dancer aged 14. And it's a really amazing kind of format where we get to meet the artist through another character who's a child. And then Mornings with Monet is a beautiful book, just this like classic, just learning who this artist is, getting to meet him, learning a little bit about his story. The last deck that I have is all about artists who saw the world differently, or shared a new idea, or changed the way that we see something, maybe even the way that we see art. So the first one here, if you have not heard of Dave the Potter, this is such an amazing story. So he was an enslaved potter, and he was not supposed to know how to read, but he did. And he would inscribe his pottery with these beautiful poems that he wrote. And so this is just really a really impactful book and an amazing story. And I feel like this artist is so powerful and so inspirational, and we don't hear enough about him. So we actually spent a whole entire month learning about his art inside of my membership, the studio. I'll actually link that below too. If you're interested in exploring a lot of artists like this, that's what we do every single month inside of the studio membership. We pick a different artist and we learn about their life story, create art inspired by them, open-ended art, so kids really get to use their imagination. I'll link that below. So Jackson Pollock is another one. He decided, I'm not putting my canvas on an easel. I'm not even going to put it on stretcher bars. I'm going to lay it loose on the floor and drip paint. Action Jackson. So he dripped paint all over his canvas. They were huge. He was probably the most famous abstract expressionist painter. And so I really love the style of this illustration too. It's kind of loose and just really energetic like his art. So, and then it's great because it has a part about him in the back too, so you can learn a little bit about the artist. So this one is really fun. Again, if your kids are kinesthetic, they will love this kind of art. Then we have A Life Made by Hand, and it's about Ruth Asawa. And she was an amazing sculptor. she created these sculptures that were woven. She learned this technique of weaving this wire, this really thin metal wire, and it really does look like this. It's loopy, they're all loopy, connected, airy, kind of ethereal. They remind me of jellyfishes when they're like floating in the aquarium, and they're hanging from the ceiling. They're almost always suspended from the ceiling. So they have this really like beautiful energy, and they cast the most amazing shadows, which becomes part of the art as well. And she just had a really interesting life story, did things differently, so she's really inspirational. And then we have Louise Bourgeois and Cloth Lullaby. So her art was also kind of, it's called a woven life because it was about, she used a lot of fabric and textiles in her art, and she did things her own way too. She was very innovative, and she's most well known for her really, really oversized mammon sculptures that are these spiders, but they're not creepy spiders. They have this really amazing meaning behind them. So she did things her own way. So did Frank Lloyd Wright. And this one could have gone in the other category too, about artists as a child. But I love the idea of Frank Lloyd Wright, and he just, who doesn't love the story of a guy who created a house on top of a waterfall? Like, and that was, nobody thought that that was possible, and then he just did it. So this is a great book about a different kind of art history that we don't always talk about, which is architecture. And on that note, there's another one, Building Zaha, about Zaha Hadid, an amazing architect. And her buildings are like absolute sculpture, gorgeous. They're just these shapes. I'm trying to find a picture of one in here. They're these shapes that you're like in disbelief that that's even a building. So, and she was quite an amazing woman who had, I love the illustration style is so great in these. So, but here you can just get a good picture of it from the back and the front. They were like these swooping, curving, kind of unexpected buildings. And then Out of This World, the surreal art of Leonora Carrington. Her art is so kind of interesting, unusual. She's a surrealist, and she just painted things that looked kind of magical and mystical and really different. So she had a really interesting life story as well. So I have a book list of all of these. Check the description for the link, and really have fun diving into these. You don't have to get all 30 at once. That's why I wanted to show you a variety. So maybe you pick out 3 or 4 that you think your kids will really love and start with those. You don't have to go in any order. You don't have to use categories like I did. Just choose the ones that your kids will really love, connect to the artist, and then see how that artist inspires them to make their own art. So this is such a fun way, whether it's just a bedtime story or an introduction to a new art project, or just something to read. That's amazing. So have fun, enjoy these books, and be on the lookout, because I probably will have to do a part 2 of this, because as I was choosing these 30 books, there were so many other good ones that didn't make the cut that really deserve to. So I will make another book list soon, but in the meantime, this gives you plenty to get started with. Be sure to comment below and let me know which ones were your favorite. And be sure to subscribe to this channel for all kinds of art history inspiration and ideas. All right, I'll see you in another video soon. Bye for now.